Welcome to Just Break Up, the podcast about love, heartbreak, and all the relationship advice you don't want to hear. My name is Sierra DeMulder.
And I'm Sam Blackwell. And today we are going to answer a letter from somebody who is dreading interacting with her 1.5-year-old son. But before we begin, we just want to give you our Surgeon General's warning, which is that Sierra and I are not licensed mental health practitioners.
No, we're not. We're not professionals. We're not trained in any of this. We're only here to share our humble musings to hopefully shed some understanding and maybe some laughs about the incredibly rewarding but mostly confusing experience that is love and parenting. Let me tell you, toddlers, all they do is gaslight you. Like, I am in a gaslighting relationship with my 2.5-year-old.
I believe it. I believe it. They're liars.
Let me tell you it's dysregulating. It's isolating, and it's challenging.
That's
But
great.
we're going to talk about parenting today in today's letter. But first, we're going to do a quick check-in topic. And honestly, today's check-in topic is just inspired by a really stark meme I saw online. Are these called memes when they're just like words, when it's just like a quote? I don't know.
I don't know.
Sure. I sent Sam this morning, and I was like, let's unpack this. It's just a meme that says, that breakup saved you. I'll say it again. That breakup saved you. And immediately I thought about the podcast, and I thought about the thousands of letters we've gotten at this point of people like in the trenches of these breakups. The breakups that just totally upend your understanding of security and trust and the future. And I thought about my own breakups, the ones that I can now look back on that devastated me, that felt like they gutted me. And I look back on them now and see how as painful and as disrupting and as, traumatizing as they were at the time, it was like they reset my train track for a different path. You know what I mean? Or they got me out of a situation that I didn't know how to get myself out of. Or they revealed to me this higher, more painful truth that I needed to grow into the person that I needed to survive, And I thought we could just, muse on that a little bit, because I think it'd be easy for me to sit here and say, oh my God, yeah, this breakup with that asshole and this breakup with that person definitely saved me. But I thought it would actually be more helpful to just speak directly to the people who are like in those trenches right now, who would never in any fiber of their being believe us when we say this breakup's going to save you right now, because nobody wants to hear that in the trenches of a breakup. Nobody's going to believe that when that breakup is something that they don't want,
Breakups save you in lots of ways. Sometimes they save you money, when like that person is just like a leech.
Oh,
and it's like,
yes, that is very true.
You know what I mean? Sometimes they also cost you money, which is like unfortunate too.
They 100% cost me money.
Especially if you have to like move out or like get a divorce or whatever.
Or, get that Panera cheddar broccoli soup bread bowls, because it's the only thing that will warm your cold, dark, lonely heart.
Those things are so good.
If you ever see me eating at Panera, I've been dumped.
Good to know. Yeah. Also, they like save you time, because you maybe spending
you are
time.
Being so practical. I love it.
They save you time wasted on a relationship that's not working. That's time back that you wouldn't have had otherwise.
It's not time back. It's not time. The time's already spent. I'm trying to think about it from the perspective
future
of
time.
I've just been
time.
crushed.
Yeah,
but I wanted that time to be with that person.
Yeah, but you
Sam.
get it back because you're not wasting it on a failed relationship. You know what I mean?
But I want to waste it on them.
Okay.
I want to be with them. See, they're in the trenches right now. You got to speak a little less practically.
This is not the way that I would talk to somebody who is in the trenches. Like, I wouldn't say this breakup saved you. I'd be like, oh my God, this fucking sucks. I'm so sorry. I would not be like toxic positivity being like, no, friend, this breakup saved you. I'm not
talking about toxic positivity. I'm talking about like finding finding a mild sense of peace that this turmoil, this current pain, is saving you from something. Do you know what I mean? And you're right. It's not the first thing I would say to somebody. I'd say, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. This sucks." I think a couple conversations down the line, I have been known to say something like, no, like a year down the line, probably. I've been known to say something like, you know, there's somebody in my life who was with somebody and they were trying to have a baby and they were having like fertility issues. But once that relationship ended, they were allowed to like unpack all the ways in which that relationship was really unhealthy and really toxic, and that they were kind of on the relationship escalator. They didn't really want to be there. You know, that perspective shift that you get from those like life altering transitions, like breakups. And we had a conversation in which they shared like, ultimately, I'm so grateful that we went through those struggles, so that we didn't have a child that in a relationship we didn't want to be in, yada, yada.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will say the other day I heard a phrase that I cackled at, that I had never heard before, which was, rejection is God's protection. And
Sure.
it's just, I could like so see it like cross stitched on something, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I'll make it more universal and just say like rejection is protection. And I know that's so hard. The problem is perspectives like this, and that like this relationship could save you from something. This breakup, I mean, they're so hard to access in the breakup, in the trenches, like when you're in the pain. I guess you don't, I guess if somebody were writing in to us and saying like, how do I see the good in this right now? I'm hurting so much. I want to be with this person. I think you and I would say something like, you don't have to find the good right now or ever. And also in the same moment, in the same body, in the same breath, we know that time yields perspective, and perspective yields, healing and growth, and there is good here, even if we can't feel it or access it now.
It's better to have broken up with someone or have been broken up with someone that doesn't want to be with you, or that doesn't, or where the relationship's not working. And that's so
hard. I mean,
right?
If you don't have a sense of security,
if
you don't have a sense of self, that's so hard to believe, because you're always going to be looking to other people to define you. I have never fucking said that. Do you know what I mean? Even people I didn't want to be with, I was like, oh God.
I need them so badly
I need
in my life.
Because I don't know who I am. But now, slowly, like I 100% believe that you don't want to be with somebody who doesn't want to be with you, because it will be a relationship of turmoil and of inconsistency and lack of security. And especially now at this stage in my life, I see how valuable a sense of security is in your life, in your heart, in your sense of self, in your relationships.
Absolutely. And I think that's why it saves you time and effort, because it's saving you from time and effort you would be wasting on somebody who doesn't want to be with you, or a relationship that's not working, right? Like, it's practically, it saves you from that effort. Is it good and fun? Does it feel good? No, absolutely not. But like, if you want to look at it and if that level of practicality is helpful for you, then like that can be something to think about. And, I think like, I love the idea that like that breakup saved you. And also your pain doesn't have to have meaning to be meaningful. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't have to like teach you some sort of lesson or save you from something you didn't want to be in or whatever to like actually matter. And I think sometimes like, some of these like pithy, like sort of, I learned a lesson from this that I'm so grateful for, so I'm so glad I went through this really tough time, is really true for some people and is really helpful. And sometimes it can undermine our understanding of things. Like sometimes things just suck and they're terrible and they don't teach us a big, beautiful lesson that we need to learn in order to like have meaning in our life, right? Sometimes they just suck, and sometimes breakups are terrible. So like, yes, breakups practically save us the effort and time we would put into somebody who doesn't actually want to be with us. But like also sometimes they just suck and they don't save us from anything that like feels super meaningful. You know what I mean? Like you don't have to like learn an important lesson in order for your like pain to matter.
I feel like we learn from all discomfort, but it doesn't have to have a greater meaning or lesson, or it doesn't have to be this, cosmic curriculum for our life, I think ultimately, if you're open to it, you can learn from your pain. You can learn like, I don't want to be in that situation again, or that person's unsafe for me, or wow, I was really vulnerable at that time. Learning in terms of like just perspective that you have through time, But I do like the idea of not putting the pressure on ourselves that we need to have like what did I say? Cosmic curriculum.
That there's some sort of cosmic curriculum we're supposed to be learning.
Yeah.
And that we can teach to others or whatever.
And well, I think what I love from that is that there's no timeline that you're missing. Man, are we so good at shaming ourselves and being like, I'm doing everything wrong. I can't be in a relationship, and now I'm breaking up wrong, and now I'm healing wrong, and now, You're not behind right now. You're exactly where you need to be, even if you don't find the good in this breakup, or if you can't see a time outside of this pain. You are where you need to be right now.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, thanks for musing with me on that random meme that I found at 7
We went all over
morning.
the place with it. So
I loved it. That's what a check-in topic's for.
Absolutely. All right, let's get into today's letter. So today's letter comes from Bad Mom, whose pronouns are she, her, who is writing from a shame cave. Dear Sam and Sierra, we've all been there. We've been in that shame cave.
I just love a shame cave.
Dear Sam and Sierra, I love my son so much it hurts. Okay, here's the issue. I'm struggling with a paralyzing guilt that I am not the mother I thought I could be. I am a young mom. I had my son when I was 23, and he is almost 1.5 now. Although I am fortunate to have help from my husband, friends, and family, it is extremely limited. Most days of the week, I am with my son alone from sunup to sundown. I also have a chronic illness that makes it very hard to regulate my moods and affects my eating. Often I feel hungry and irritable. I am devout to a faith that holds selflessness as superior, and I find myself falling short of my spiritual ideas regularly in my nightly prayer routine. Even though selflessness is a tall order, I felt it was easy to meet that before having my son. Now, though, I feel utterly stuck in my tiny home, my money situation, and my lack of parenting knowledge. I love my son very much and want the absolute best for him, but most of the time I feel like I am not a good mother. This fear is paralyzing, which is causing a cycle of waking up dreading interacting with my son and then doing nothing but numbing out all day. The kicker is doing nothing actually makes me feel worse and more guilty. LOL, who would have thought? I've reached out to various people in my life asking for more support, and I am told that it is just normal for a mother to be stressed and to feel guilty. Am I allowed to not accept that answer? I believe that there must be a better life, but is that partially because I expect too much? I know that I need a perspective shift and tangible action towards being more present and a positive mother, but it all feels so overwhelming. I feel as though I am failing my son and God every time I decide to look at my phone instead of play with my son, every time I decide to go out with friends instead of spending a night at home with my husband and my dog. Even writing this while my son breastfeeds feels selfish. I am sure this problem is not unique to me, but why is it that the normalized burden of motherhood dilutes this genuine support we offer each other? How do we live with the grief of missing moments with those we love because we couldn't show up as our very best? Anything at all you could say on this would be very appreciated. I feel as though I'm writing this from the loneliest shame cave in the world.
Aww. Oh, my darling. Thank you so much for reaching out to us from that dark, dark cave. And trusting us with this letter. I felt very drawn to this letter, obviously as a parent, but honestly more as somebody who really struggles with the, feeling of shame. And that's ultimately what made me really want to answer it today on the show is not just parenting advice, but the idea that we put extreme pressure on ourselves to show up perfectly to incredibly difficult life experiences that we've never done before. And instead of giving ourselves the grace and understanding that we extend to literally strangers on the street, we are so hard on ourselves. We tell ourselves that we're failing our loved ones, our God, our spiritual groups, our loved, our partners, and that we're failing. Instead of saying I'm having a hard time, it's I'm failing. And I have lots of love to give you, and even some practical parenting perspectives that have really helped me wade through the rocky waters that are the first couple of years of parenting. And I know Sam and I also want to say that you don't have to accept what your community is telling you about normalcy when it comes to hardships in early parenting. Like, it doesn't have to be accepted. There are things that we can do about that, and we can start pushing back on that narrative here on the show in this letter. So we've got lots to get to. First, we're going to take a very, very brief break.
All right, everyone, welcome back. Yes, especially welcome back to you, bad mom. I'm going to take away the bad and just call you mom because, you're not a bad mother, even as you're experiencing a lot of this shame. And I think one of the things that I think is really true of lots of us, and especially I think like new parents, is that there's like this idea of perfection that many of us are trying to achieve, right? Like, it's the idea of like, I'm going to be the perfect partner. And so I'm never going to have a bad day where I need time. I'm never going to snap at my partner. I'm never going to not be able to anticipate their needs or say the wrong thing, right? And I think that this is so true, especially of people who are mothers, that like there's a level of perfection that we expect from parenting where it's like, I'm never going to look at my phone when my kid's in the same room with me, right? Or I'm never going to have a day where I snap at them or don't want to spend time with them. Or like, I'm going to find all of the perfect enrichment that is going to turn them into the perfect child that's going to achieve all the perfect things. And I'm never going to question whether or not I'm doing the right thing. And I think that is just so challenging. And I don't want to like say that you are holding yourself to a perfect standard as a way to shame you and say like, stop being a perfectionist, right? I want to name that as something that I think that lots of people struggle with, and also remind us, me too, that perfect doesn't exist, right? I had this conversation with my therapist recently where he was like, oh, what did you learn from that experience or whatever stupid thing therapists say to us? And I was like, well, I learned that I can't be perfect all the time. And he was like, Can we reframe that? And I was like, you were like, what do you mean?
Dare you?
Yeah. He was like, well, no one can be perfect any of the time. And I was like, fuck you. Why did you say that to me? What am I supposed to learn from that? Right.
I love that you eye rolled at his original question and then he fucking got you.
Yeah, he absolutely got me. Absolutely. And he was like, so what can we say instead? And I was like, I guess we can say that perfect doesn't exist. And it was actually like, I'm sort of making a joke about this because I like to pretend I have an antagonistic relationship with my therapist, and we don't. I'm so like, what? Help me.
You love him.
Absolutely. Is that like, I have to remember sometimes that perfect doesn't actually exist. There is no perfect to aspire to because it is unachievable, right? And I used to give myself some grace to say like, well, it's okay. You can't be perfect all the time. But now I'm trying this other thing where I'm like, perfect isn't even an option. So you just got to pick the thing that's available. Like you have to pick something that's not perfection. And I think that like that is a helpful reframe for me as somebody who's like, I want, especially in like work and in my partnership, right? I don't know what it's like to be a parent. And so like, I know that that's even like, I can imagine that it's even more difficult to challenge perfectionism when you're a parent, but like, I have to remember like perfect isn't even an option. So stop holding yourself to it because it's unachievable. And it gives us grace to say like, listen, friends, like we're going to fuck up sometimes. We're not going to be the perfect partner. We're not going to be the perfect parent. We're not going to be the perfect student or whatever it is. And that's okay. Right. Like, that is a thing that we are going to have to deal with. We're just going to, and that makes it easier because then we're dealing with the actual problem as opposed to dealing with the fake problem of like, I'm not a perfect person. Like that's, you know what I mean? Like instead we're like, oh, I'm actually just having a shitty day. Maybe I should tend to myself instead of being like, I'm having a shitty day and it's because I'm not failing. A perfect person. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. I love that. I think I'll start my piece of advice at the most profound parenting advice that I've been given so far on this journey, just to like set the foundation of like what I'm building off of, is that like, I don't think a perfect parent, doesn't exist. I don't think great parenting is being fully engaged with your child all the time. I don't think your perfect parenting or great parenting is having 100 activities for them and taking them out and to do enriching things all the time and like, you know, being fully engaged at all. The best piece of advice that my wife and I have internalized in our parenting strategy, she read somewhere that said that all you really need to do for your child to be a great parent, truthfully, all you need to do is to be a calm and loving presence in their life. Everything else is just noise. Your child was born with an essence, and all you need to do to be a great parent is to make space for them, to be themselves, to love them for who they are, to be curious about who they are, and to keep them physically and emotionally safe. All you have to be is a calm and loving presence. So when they are freaking out, you are calm and you are loving. And when they are so sad, you are calm and you are loving. And when they're angry at you, you are calm and you are loving because your love isn't conditional on their emotional state, you know? And to pair with that, especially talking about your guilt when it comes to being selfless, I have always remembered what I heard when I first became vaguely an educator, which is that think about what you hear when you go on an airplane. Like, the flight attendants want you to put on your oxygen mask before you help someone else. Because if there's a crisis and you don't put your oxygen mask on and you're trying to put the oxygen mask on your loved ones, on your child, the people that need your assistance, you are going to burn out. If you don't help yourself before you help other people, it is unsustainable. And I mean that hard stop, period. Literally think about the oxygen mask. If the plane's going down and you're losing oxygen, you will pass out before you're actually able to save your own child or save your vulnerable adult or whatever. Similarly, your child needs you to take care of yourself. Your child, your community, your husband, they need you to feel fulfilled in life by things other than giving. Because if you don't start taking care of this part of yourself, you will burn out in a much bigger, much more painful way.
Yes. It's like the idea of selflessness is an aspiration, but it's not a demanded state of being. You know what I mean? Like yes, absolutely. It's a guidepost for us to say, given all of the choices, like, how can I practice selflessness? But it's not a demand to be that 100% of the time, right? You know, especially in so many different religions, right? Like humans are seen as what they are, which is flawed and challenged and trying really hard, right? And I think the idea of aspiring to selflessness is a beautiful idea, and I think lots of us could benefit from the idea of aspiring to caring for others and worrying less about our own sort of like wants and desires. And we can't do that all the time. Like the idea that perfection doesn't exist, selflessness doesn't exist, right? It's not something that we can actually achieve, because we're humans who have needs, right? Like we are people who are flawed. All of the things that Sierra just said about our shared flawed humanity are absolutely true. And so I love the idea of selflessness. And I love that choosing selflessness was easier when you had a kid. Guess what? The circumstances, or before you had a kid, the circumstances have changed, right? Of course it's harder for you to be selfless when you have
fundamentally have changed.
Absolutely.
Yes.
When you have a 1.5-year-old who is constantly demanding your time and attention, right? Of course it's more difficult when you're feeling isolated from the community around you because you have a 1.5-year-old who's demanding all of this of you. Like, everything about your life has fundamentally changed. And Sierra talks about this all the time, right? Like, having a kid makes everything different. And so holding ourselves to the same standards of relationship, of activity, of ability to do enriching things for ourselves, right? Like, has to change because the world has changed. And I just want to remind you of that because, again, I want you to give yourself more grace and credit for how hard you're trying, for all of the amazing things that you're doing to be a good parent to this child, and to let yourself recognize that, like, this shit is hard. Right? Like, this is not an easy thing to do, to take a child from completely helpless and not able to do anything to hopefully a human adult who can, like, take care of themselves and their communities. And like that's a tall order. That is some of the hardest work that I think that any of us could imagine. And still, we demand from parents, and particularly from mothers, do it all perfectly and don't let anyone know how difficult it is for you, right? Like, that's what we ask of people. And it's so unreasonable. And honestly, that's what parents often ask of themselves too, right? Like, I have to be doing this perfectly. I have to be able to be selfless and, like, all of the things that we've listed here. And like, it is hard. And I know that that's not the answer that you want, right? Like, I know that you want to, like, find a perfect solution that makes it easy for you to be a 100% present and enriching mother. And I don't think that that's an option, right? Perfect doesn't exist. That sort of state
and selflessness
of, like,
doesn't exist.
Absolutely. That sort of state
I
of,
really
like,
don't like there's no one out there who's not taking care of themselves.
Right. And we have to, right? Because we have needs. Like, we have to breathe, we have to eat, we have to.
Yeah.
And I want to even say, like, numbing out on your phone, right? Like, that is you trying to find a way to take time for yourself to hold your spiritual, mental, and emotional needs met, right? Like, that's what the zoning out, looking at your phone is trying to do.
Also, connection.
Absolutely. Go out with your friends.
Phones give us connection. Unfortunately, like they are definitely an evil force in the shame spiral cave that we can live in. But they also make us feel connected when we've been otherwise really isolated. And maybe the only person we've spoken to today is a 1.5-year-old.
For sure. I mean? Absolutely. So as you're, like, having these moments of guilt about the fact that you're not doing all of these things, or that you're not 100% present all the time, I want to, like, take a step back, and I want you to think about not just your immediate physical needs of, like, are you eating, are you breathing, are you drinking water? But I also want to prioritize and say, you have other needs that we diminish, especially with parents, but you have needs for emotional connection with people. You have needs for spiritual care. You have
that
needs
your child and your husband cannot meet.
Absolutely.
You hear
right?
Like, you don't expect perfection from your husband either. Like, you are not fulfilling each other wholly. That is not the way it works.
Absolutely. So when you're feeling guilty about going out with your friends, or you're feeling guilty about looking at your phone, or you're feeling guilty about writing us a letter while your son breastfeeds, I want you to look at those and not say, oh God, that's me being a bad mom. I want you to look at those and say, oh, that's me trying to meet a need that is going unmet right now, right? Like, that is me trying to put my oxygen mask on so that I get the emotional support I need, so that I get the spiritual tending that I need, right? So that I get the I don't know, intellectual stimulation that I need in order to be a good parent, right? I need those things in order for me to be the selfless parent that I would like to be, or to aspire to that selfless parenting that I would like to aspire to. But I think so many of us deny those types of needs because they don't feel so immediate, right? And also we've been told to deny them in lots of different ways, and to only, like, buy things to meet them. Like, that's the reality of the system that we're living in. But those things are needs, and and you're sitting in an airplane and that oxygen mask of like spiritual life is in front of you and you need to put it on. Like you need to put on that thing and start breathing so that you can then look at your child and say, how can I tend to your emotional needs, to your spiritual needs, to all of those things that are also important to them. So it's an act of care for your child, for you to take care of yourself and those particular needs in the moment, right? And you feeling guilty about that doesn't serve you, and it
Yes.
doesn't serve your child either.
Yeah. And I want to speak, the last thing I want to touch on is just like mom to mom, you are in a fucking insane transition right now. Like, I know how uprooted your life felt when you had that baby. And so the baby's a year and a half, you're still nursing, which I think is awesome. I commend you for that. I did the same thing. And I also know that when I started to cut down on nursing because my baby started to eat more solid foods, I have never in my life had such a stark hormonal shift. And so that added to the fact that you're already lonely, you're stressed out, you have a chronic illness, you're isolated, and your body's hormones are doing wild things right now. Yeah. Talk about undermining women and people who can have children, who can get pregnant. They say that like your body doesn't return to the pre-pregnancy state until at least 2 years after birth, if ever. Is what the data is showing us, if ever. Yeah. So I just want to remind you that, like, when you describe like feeling guilty being on your phone while you're nursing your baby, like, I feel this is such a physical, emotional time. You are doing so much, and you are doing it very young, as you told me, as you shared with us. Yep. And I want to paint a couple pictures for you. When you are on your phone zoning out and your child is playing independently on the floor, that's a great thing. You want to foster independence in that child, and you're not denying them anything because you are that calm and loving presence. Sometimes when I'm on my phone in front of my daughter and she comes up to me and says like, Mom, look, this pumpkin sticker is ripped. I'm like, oh no, do you want me to fix it? No, I'm going to put it on the wall. Okay, honey, that sounds good. I'm a calm and loving presence. And that is all she needs to feel secure to me. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And letting your child play independently without your constant monitoring or engagement is actually really good from them. From one mom to another, I want to say that you're actually doing a great thing by letting that child engage with the world independently. That is going to make them not only feel secure with a sense of self, but also that they can go to you if there's an issue, right? They're playing safely independently by themselves. That's a great thing. And the last thing I want to touch on, mom to mom, is that if I had reached out to anybody, how about this? My comparable experience is that I had a really traumatic birth experience. And when I was talking about it to some elders in my life, they pulled at least the baby's here safe. At least the baby, now we've got this great blessing, this baby. And that wasn't enough for me. And I want you to know that it's okay if it's not enough for you, that your community and your loved ones are telling you, this is just really hard. Yeah. It's okay to say, I don't want to accept that. And I also want to say, mom to mom, it sounds like you might be struggling with extra things like postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety. Like I said, our bodies are doing crazy things at this time, and you're not failing by struggling by those things. So many of us struggle with these things silently because it's not a part of society's conversations about motherhood and pregnancy, because we love to over romanticize them and diminish the actual labor and hardship that it is, right?
For sure. Absolutely.
So them just affirming how hard it is, I'm not accepting that either. I want to say to you that it is beautiful that you have this lovely son and that you made it here today. And it is hard, and it's not fair that it's both. And I want to encourage you to seek therapy if you have means to it. I had a postpartum therapist who helped me with my PTSD over my birth experience. And that was profound for me, to just have another person who knew about these early years, these struggles, to talk to. I also want to tell you that you'll see a lot of rhetoric about motherhood and parenting in these early years online that is like, haha, it's hard, it's isolating.
Drink some wine.
I want to hear, but it can be really damaging to underestimate how challenging this is. You're not doing anything wrong because it's hard. The way that you have learned to exist in the world for the first 22 years of your life no longer works. So you are in this totally new terrain, and it's scary and it's isolating, but I'm encouraging you to reach out to people, to not accept that it's just hard. You know, I think that you should reach out to any resources that you have, like therapy, and keep asking for help. Keep asking for people to relieve this, because there's so much going on in your heart, in your body, in your life right now that is going to challenge you. And I don't want you to be selfless. I don't want you to spread yourself too thin. I want you to get the support that you deserve.
Absolutely.
And honestly, I just want to say, like, I could sob this entire episode because all of this is so real, but I'm literally just trying to keep a lid on it, because if I start crying, it's just done. It's just over.
For sure. For sure.
But so I'm sharing that only to be like, so many people are going to relate to this, and so many people think you deserve more support.
Yes.
Right?
We
It's
certainly
so
do.
unnatural that we have sort of isolated ourselves in these family units in this way. Anyway, we're reaching time, but I can talk about this more. So maybe
Absolutely.
subscribe to our Patreon and write back in, and then I'll rant to you for another 30 minutes.
Perfect. All right, Mom. Thank you so much for writing to us. We love you so much. I hope that some of the things that we said resonate with you in some way to help alleviate some of this guilt that you're feeling about being this perfect, selfless mom, and to recognize that, this is hard work and you're doing really well at it, even as you are finding places where you might want to do other things. Like that's the experience that I think lots of people are feeling, and you're doing a great job. So we hope that this helps.
One more thing, tiny little resource. Go buy, if you can, if you have the means. It's called Busy Toddler's Guide for Actual Parenting. And it is a great, really accessible book on like activities you can do at home with your baby, toddler, and beyond. All very cheap, all nothing like flashy. And the author, she has an Instagram account called Actual Parenting, and I really liked the way she talked about how we're not actually supposed to stare at our kids all day long, and that we're supposed she calls it like sittervising, where she creates an activity for them to do, and then you sit in the other room while they're doing it so that they can explore their own identity and their own curiosity and their
Totally.
their whatever, and that you're allowed to be your whole being over here. And so I just like that it's very practical, and she has some great little essay vignettes about parenting and support and things like that. So go check that out, Actual Parenting. And also get offline if you're following other parents. The content is not always inspiring. Listen, I love you, and we hope this helps.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. If you would like more content from us, or if you would like access to our monthly office hours, you can support us on Patreon. If you support us on Patreon for as little as $5 a month, you'll get an additional bonus weekly episode, as well as access to those monthly office hours. That's patreon.com/justbreakuppod.
You can slide into our DMs, send us your favorite relationship memes, but most importantly, you can submit your questions about all matters of the heart at justbreakuppod.com, which is also where you can find our merchandise.
Please remember to like, follow, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating and review. This literally keeps our mics on and helps us reach more brokenhearted souls who need two random strangers giving them relationship advice.
Just Break Up is a production of Duvid Media, original music, recording, editing, producing all magical things by our good friend Spencer Worth Davis. Make sure to check out his podcast and his music. And remember, there is no such thing as perfect, and there's no such thing as a perfect parent. You have to be able to fulfill your own sense of self before giving to others. This is required. This is necessary. And this is actually an act of generosity. This is an act of giving. This is an act of sustainability, is giving to yourself so that you can give to others. And if all else fails,
just break up.